Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Making Money with the NeuVector, the Container Protection Advantage. I see a few more attendees logging in, so we'll begin in a minute to give everyone a chance to get settled. Good day, everyone, and welcome. My name is Chris Jones. I'm a marketing campaign manager with TD SYNNEX Public Sector, where we accelerate public sector growth for technology companies. Before we get started, let's go over a few housekeeping items. Next slide, please. If you have any technical questions, please message Felicia directly in the chat. Your lines are muted for the duration of the webinar. However, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to drop any questions in the Q&A or chat. In addition, there will be a Q&A time at the end of the presentation for follow-up questions. This session will be recorded. The recording will be made available 1 week after the live session. If you would like a copy of the brief, you can email a request for a copy. Include your name, email, organization in the chat section. Next slide, please. Now, a brief introduction of your presenter. Director of Container Security at Rancher Government Solutions, Tom has over 20 years of experience in building innovative technology companies for the federal government and DoD. Before being acquired and added to the RGS portfolio, Tom was the Vice President of North American Sales at NeuVector Incorporated. Now, he brings the leading full-cycle container security solution to modernize the agency's zero-trust approach from reactionary security to preventative protection. And with that, I'm now turning over the presentation to Tom.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. And just want to give you a snapshot. I am here. I'm not AI generated. I'm a person. Not in San Francisco, obviously, that's a background, but I'm a couple hundred miles south of that, just below Vandenberg Air Force Base for logistical purposes. But thanks for joining. We're going to talk a little bit about NeuVector and how to make money with NeuVector specifically, using our differentiation as methodology to do so. Let me turn my video off and I'll share my screen, and then we'll pick it up from there. Good deal. Well, change of the game with NeuVector is the subject matter at hand. Thanks, Chris, again for the introduction. Yeah, my specialty has always been traditional and tactical electronic warfare since security came of age 20 some odd years ago. Before that, it was always networking and connecting people. Now it's making sure people are connected securely. So we'll jump right into the actual technology and the content here. I have a quick agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about container security and container protection, understanding the difference. Certainly the NeuVector solution and how that differentiates itself. Protect first approach to container security, which is allowing our partners to open paths to more sales. The hybrid market opportunity. NeuVector was a private company before acquisition, now part of the RGS or Rancher Government Solutions product suite. However, the product remains hybrid, meaning that we'll connect and protect any Kubernetes type deployment, whether it's Red Hat OpenShift or VMware Tanzu or any of them. So we'll discuss that in detail. We'll also talk about the deal types that we typically accelerate on when folks understand the difference between security and protection, as well as some application use cases, and then hopefully a partnership opportunity with you good folks. So protecting containers, I mean, the challenge is pretty simple. I'm sure you're familiar with it. The Kubernetes specifically, and Docker prior to that, has become the new development medium for the U.S. federal government across civilian, DoD, and IC environments. And these are growing fast. And whether it's DevSecOps or production, more and more applications are moving into production where they're simply more susceptible to attack. And on top of that, we have some challenges out there. Traditional security tools don't work, like from the wired side. Scanning provides, a detect and patch function, but absolutely zero protection. And we'll talk about that in detail. And then shift left, which includes scanning and compliance, which are all great and needed processes when you're building an application, are super important. But runtime, which is often confused with protection, really, while best practice and you have to have it, still cannot stop attacks. It's a fallacy that it can, and I'll show you that. So what's the opportunity out there? We've seen some tremendous growth, of course, in the container security market. This is an AI overview generated number. It was the smallest number I could find. So conservatively speaking, you're talking about growth in 2024 of 2.35 billion for overall market opportunity. This is significant in that, from our perspective, NeuVector can help you augment your quarterly business numbers with revenue that produces margin and therefore profit. Small transactions add up, and the time to sale is faster on the security side than it is potentially on the IT side, which can take months. The average NeuVector sale is roughly 50K. Large sales are historically 600K or more. We have a few over a couple million in deployments. So you know that these production size networks in the federal government and the commercial space are growing tremendously. Protection is our advantage. Again, there's a difference between security and protection, and we're going to review that in detail. Also, hybrid is your advantage, and simply that customers don't want to be locked into a specific technology. They want to run a different orchestrator, Mirantis, or as I said, Tanzu, or OpenShift, or Rancher, or just straight Kubernetes. They should be able to do that, but know that they're being protected. Usually you get one swing at the plate. So our customer base traditionally across the entire cloud sector, they are what I call they're hammered by vendors saying that everyone has a better mousetrap, and so there's what I call vendor fatigue there, and they really don't have time to analyze products unless they see immediate value. And that's something that we can offer you as differentiation out there against a very broad market with a lot of propositioning and posturing. I was just at the Baltimore Technic Cyber. Prior to that, I was at RSA, and I saw all sorts of great claims with very little teeth, meaning very little value. An example of that would be actionable intelligence. Well, actionable intelligence from Tom's perspective, not necessarily NeuVector's perspective, is intelligence that comes before an event happens. So you can truly make it actionable by preventing bad things and allowing good things. Again, that's just my opinion. So our task, and when I say our, I mean if you decide to partner or are a partner of NeuVectors through RGS, would be to get you a committed POC on the first call. And the reason that's important is because once a customer installs NeuVector and they understand the difference between us and all the container security platforms, it's a pretty easy sale to put in your bucket. So my ask is that you inform us of this, register deals with us, and let us help you make that happen. In each presentation, generally over the last 20 plus years, right, I've opened with some type of, banner slide, and I've never spent any time on it beyond introductions, who I am, that kind of thing. But in this case here, I have to state that this one here is a little different because NeuVector is a container protection and not container security company. Sure, we do both, but that is our differentiation, the difference between security and protection. So we're also, real-time, inline, behavioral-based enforcement for Kubernetes. No one on the market that I'm aware of is. I know that there are a lot of powerful data sheets out there that can do that from a number of companies, but the products simply fail when in head-to-head competition, typically in a proof of concept. And I'll explain that. In generalized terms, there are 3 or 4 major components of container security. There's what we started out with 5-7 years ago, vulnerability and compliance management, super important best practice, where you're scanning and trying to find a gap report that shows you where you have your vulnerabilities and your compliance issues that you're mandated to meet in order to run, potentially get ATO, authority to operate, those type things. And then there's runtime. And runtime is often confused with protection. The fact is that we can prove that runtime is first just a time. It is not a technology. Somebody saying that I have runtime and therefore I'm secure, congratulations. But it is just a time. It's what you do during the time when the application is running that makes a difference, not just saying that you have runtime. There's also security beyond runtime. The ability to preemptively block attacks based on contextual knowledge of what is trying to traverse a container cluster from container to container, and the content, understanding the content. There are other pieces, obviously. There's security as code, the ability to replicate code across different environments, whether they're traditional or tactical. There's virtual patching or countermeasures is what we call them. This is the ability to protect images and applications, whether there is a patch or upgrade available or not, or possibly if there's an issue that is unresolved, being able to protect that container asset. That's important. And then there's unmanned tactical ops. Most of the products require some type of management. You have to search for CVEs as an example, or compliance issues or runtime events, and then take action. And the reason for that mainly is because 99% of the tools are designed for after the event, post-event analysis and reaction. We do it all. So let me say that up front. In fact, our platform is put out there in 2 primary pieces. The first piece, of course, is container security, what all the vendors, kind of cut their teeth on, so to speak. That includes the vulnerability scanning, the compliance scanning, the runtime, and the emission control. Again, these are great best practices, better used in a dev environment, but not really adequate for protection functions. Emission control, I've added that one in there. Simply, this is a way to define in a determined manner what will be permitted to cross that demarcation point between development and production, so you can build your gold standard image. The issue with all of these is that these are detection and preparation technologies. They are not protection technologies. So while they're needed, I mean, you definitely want to do these almost on a religious basis. They are not protection. The second part of NeuVector is our multi-vector container protection mechanisms. This means that we have contextual enforcement. We understand what is being attempted to be pushed between containers down to the packet level. We understand contextually what is inside the wrapper. We're not just looking at port labels, IP tables, eBPF maps. We're preemptively examining the packet content to identify multiple aspects of the traffic and assure that it's permitted to cross that separate demarcation point between containers. Holding a defensive traffic position, it's very difficult to block an attack unless you sit defensively between the attacker and the target. We have that, and I'll show you that in a minute. Gated zero trust. I personally am not a big fan of zero trust because, I don't know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, no one had zero trust, and suddenly everybody does. I realize it's just, an architecture for the future. We have provable zero trust with layer 7 blocking, which no one else has out there, as well as segmentation. And that is enabled, in fact, by the fact that we are deployed inline and in real time, as opposed to a after the fact or post event monitoring platform. So these are attack prevention technologies. They get you in front of your attackers and prevent the attacker from hitting their target. So let's take a look at container security. So again, this is needed. You always have to have, all the important defense in depth pieces to your build, whether you're just coming out of the initial setup of an application, early in the application lifecycle. Maybe you're using Jenkins or Circle CI or Bamboo or Git or another CI/CD platform. You have to scan that, make sure it has architectural integrity, that it's going to do what you need to do, that there are no obvious holes. And the next step will no doubt be scanning for CVEs and compliance. But recognize that these are monitor and react functions. Same thing with runtime. That's just fast monitoring and reaction. The way it's deployed by most companies, I haven't found one yet that doesn't work like this, because most of them, of course, leverage eBPF, which is a kind of a subroutine run on the kernel after something potentially dangerous happens. So I will go into this further, but just understand that, like when you go to a football game, you are not on the playing field typically, unless you're part of the NFL or whatever you're watching. You're in the stands, and scanning and runtime is very much like that. They're not on the playing field. When you're in the stands, you can root as much as you want for your team. You can scream as loud as you will. You can wear, funny clothes and wave wands. Whatever you do, you cannot impact what happens on the field of play because you are not there. Scanning is very much like that. Runtime is very much like that. Yes, you can potentially look for changes in runtime, but if you don't have the full picture of what's happening from a contextual standpoint, you could just assume block something that was turned out to be a false positive. So scanning, compliance, runtime, all needed best practices, best used during the development of an application, not really suitable for protection. There's no provable segmentation with these functions, including runtime, as every attack gets through to some extent. Why? Because these technologies are not on the attack playing field. They're not between the quarterback and the receiver. How do you swat the ball down from the stands? What if you're sitting on the kernel or the proverbial bench? How can you have to have really long legs to impact that traffic? How do you prevent data moving from one container to another if you're not in between those two containers? If you're sitting on the kernel, you are not in between those two containers. If you're looking at syscall tables or an eBPF map, you are looking at post-event data as it happened. And so the fact that you have fast monitoring capability still puts you in the reactionary bucket. So our approach to this is quite different, but just recognize that when you're scanning, you're doing compliance, you're doing runtime, there is absolutely no prevention option for protecting one container from another, because you're not in line, you're not real time, you're not sitting between those containers guarding one container from another. You are just quickly noticing that there's some anomaly, and hopefully you got that right. So not holding a defensible position in the north-south or east-west traffic planes. And I'm sure you know the difference there, but just to clarify, east-west is really within the cluster, the actual communications between containers at a very high level. And then anything that goes in and out of the clusters is considered north-south. You have to be deployed between containers or as a protection platform on any ingress and egress connection in order to truly prevent something. If you aren't, and you're just observing and trying to notify folks, well, we get back to that actionable intelligence that's not really actionable. So container security, of course, is included with NeuVector, but that's not what the platform was designed to do. I mean, sure, everybody uses our container security as part of some of the big reference designs in the DoD across the board. It's certified. We have ATO on NeuVector deployed networks for those customers that need that. But just recognize that it is not based upon our scanning ability, which is nice to have, but not protection. So our suggestion is that you assure your customer understands that these first are best for development environments. Make sure they understand the limitations and that you can scream from the stands as much as you want, but you cannot block anything unless you're on the playing field. And then you have, conversely, NeuVector container protection. Excuse me. So what's the difference? NeuVector container protection is deployed on the playing field, literally between the quarterback and the receiver, between each container in real time, inline, where we can block the ball. We can stop an attack before it hits its intended target. Sorry, number 19, you are not going to be hit by this attack simply because we will prevent it. Being on the playing field in both east-west and north-south traffic planes is critical to being able to do that. Holding that critical defensive position, deployed between the attackers and victims or the quarterback and the receiver so that we can stop the ball if the ball is dangerous. And also having a contextual understanding of what's trying to be attempted so that we don't end up with false positives. Preventative is the only mechanism that NeuVector was initially designed for 7.5 years ago. The only inline and real-time enforcement for Kubernetes. So every connection request, in fact, is challenged against a behavioral policy set with NeuVector. You can't say that because there is no challenge after the fact. After the ball has gone down the field and hit that receiver and he runs for the end zone, it's too late. Essentially, there's no 5-second rule with Kubernetes. Simply, once you're hit, you can't just blow off the container and say, oh, everything's good. You don't know what happened in that initial attack. And so knowing after the fact is not that helpful, especially to the DoD and IC under, tenuous times. And also, it gives you an opportunity to lessen the agency's detect and patch burden. I mean, essentially, this is the mechanism in which the DoD has decided to use simply because they don't know that they can actually protect. They use container security to detect CVEs and then patch or upgrade the CVE until it's no longer a danger, if there's a patch available for it. Unfortunately, history is repeating itself. If you remember back 20 years ago, we were doing this with McAfee and Symantec when CVEs were actually called signatures. It didn't work out so well. Why? Because an attacker could change one bit, one profile element, and suddenly not be detected. So we're asking that our partners go out and let their customers know that when the next Log5j attack comes out, Log4j on steroids, our customers, like with Log4j, we're not really concerned. Why? Because we eliminate the possibility of a Log4j attack from executing, and I'll explain that as well. So, provable zero trust in a preventative manner, the ability to block attacks before they hit the target. We think, even though zero trust is kind of just a boilerplate for operation, we think the ability to prove that you can prevent an attack is more substantial than knowing about an attack after the fact. And to put it another way, if you're on a mission, you're in the military, you're part of the DoD, and you're on a mission, and they're handing out flak jackets. Would you like the flak jacket that tells you quickly after you've been shot that you've been hit? Or would you like the flak jacket that prevents penetration of any projectile? You make the call. We are the latter. We have the ability to block attacks before they hit their target. And this is a critical differentiation between NeuVector and all the other container security products out there. Again, I know their data sheets do this, their products do not, and we prove it every day. So the other thing is that, of course, I can be secure. I can just unplug my computer. I can destroy all IO or interfaces to it, and suddenly I'm secure from network attack, wireless attack, those type of things. Some other vendors out there, in order to try to block based on layer 3 indicators or what they pull from an eBPF map or a syscall table, their methodology to try to stop traffic is to destroy your application. I mean, it certainly works, but I've never heard a developer say that was a good thing or an application owner say that was a good thing. So we offer a different approach. We offer discrete violation termination, which means that we understand what is different in an attack from a behavioral perspective. We're not using images that you thought were secure 2 hours ago, 2 days ago, 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago. Nope. We're using actual live traffic behaviors to protect data and determine whether traffic should cross a demarcation point between container 1 and container 2. We're also built so that once you have your protection suite, your security as code set up, that you don't have to have manned operation of the platform in order to protect an application. And this is why we're suitable for a number of use cases in tactical deployment. We don't care whether it's shipboard, terrestrial, whether airborne, it could be on a large aircraft, could be on a UAV, could be deployed in a tank. We simply don't care. Our product is built for unmanned tactical operation at the edge to protect the warfighter, in that case, from any type of attack, including any container drift. So how do we do it? And again, I hope you're still awake with my monotone voice. How do we do it? Well, it's behavioral protection in seconds. As you know, Kubernetes, in order to make or keep application development agile and the delivery being all important, hides all network and application information from the development community. The idea there is to keep them focused on building the best applications. The issue comes when you're talking to folks that have security in their title. If you don't know what's going across a wire right this second, If you don't know the contents beyond a port label or some IP table element, then you're probably not a security person, or you simply don't have the means to understand what is traversing. You're certainly in a liable position because you don't know what's happening. Imagine if I gave you a bag and say, "Hey, I'm Tom Hance from NeuVector. Please don't look in the bag, but I know you're getting on a flight. Um, don't look in the bag, but I'll have somebody to pick up the bag on the other end of the flight." Would you do it? I certainly hope not. Simply, this is how most Kubernetes security products work. They just assume that, port number 53 is DNS. Port 443 must be encrypted, right? Not in a port spoofing world. I'm sure that our nation state enemies don't, they probably find that amusing. The bottom line is that Kubernetes, yes, built for agility, leaves folks in the security side somewhat liable because you simply don't have the visibility into east-west or north-south traffic that you need to assure that the warfighter, civilian agency, and IC agency is truly protected. So we looked at this challenge 7.5 years ago and developed container deep packet inspection to give that visibility and control back. What we do is we interrogate every connection attempt against a set of behaviors that we automatically define upon the installation of NeuVector. So we're not just looking at port labels and IP tables and maps of what happened. We're looking at real live traffic at the packet level. We're looking at packet content, both the header and payload, to assure that there's nothing dangerous in the potential transmission that can hurt this container here from this container here. We want to make sure that the packet content is clean of attacks, and we're doing that with deep packet inspection, which we developed and patented. No one else has this. Most of them are just looking at the wrapper, like I said, at layer 3 or 4 at best, and assuming that what is inside the wrapper is not harmful. We identified the layer 7 application protocol with that very same deep packet inspection. But we also interrogate the packet content of the application protocol itself. As an example, you can have a DNS tunneling attack, essentially a reverse shell with encryption out the back door that will harm most networks not protected by NeuVector. Why? Because simply it's very difficult to protect yourself from something you cannot see. We're the only company in the world that I'm aware of that can see packet flows in real time and make the determination whether the data is clear at layer 7. I should note that every boundary, every connection between tenant command, compute silo, etc., from the Pentagon on out is protected on the wired side by an application-aware gateway, probably in a defense in depth manner where they have multiple products at each boundary. Doesn't scale very well, but one thing's for sure, about 18 years ago, 15 years ago or so, application awareness became the thing with firewalls, and they're used in gateways across the DoD infrastructure. Like I said, all the infrastructures, all the commercial markets use this, but when you get to Kubernetes, it isn't there, simply because all the products that I'm aware of are only layer 3, 4 capable. They don't have application awareness. They, even if they could identify the application protocol after a transmission took place, they still don't know if there was anything dangerous in the application protocol itself. So just know that NeuVector looks automatically and instantaneously at packet content, layer 7 application protocol with that detailed interrogation of the content under the covers of the application protocol. We look at process permissions, and we look for any file system access permissions, data loss prevention policy. Of course, because we're looking in the packets themselves, we have the ability to create data loss prevention policy. You could say that you have sensitive, compartmentalized, or classified data types that you want to protect with NeuVector between containers in a container native or cloud native environment. And we have that ability simply because we're not just relying on the wrapper label. That would be foolish in a modern day network like a Kubernetes or Docker environment. We also look at WAF policy. The point here is that, and metadata for that matter. The point here is that we're not a one-hit wonder, right? We have the ability to look at multiple layers, multiple attack vectors to assure that the behaviors match what you said is permissible. NeuVector, multi-vector is really how the company was named. This is kind of a graphical representation of exactly what we do on every transmission request. In fact, we hold the critical defensive position between two container pairs because we're deployed, unlike any other company, in between container pairs by patent. Essentially, we deploy between containers simply because we need that defensive and preemptive traffic position between the quarterback and the receiver in order to stop the ball. No one else has that. They wait till it shows up on a syscall table or an eBPF map after it hits a kernel and the eBPF process sets off or subroutine sets off. That's great. Again, if you want to know you've been hit. Our customers want to know that they can't be hit, preferably. Now, there's no silver bullet with container security or container protection, as I'm talking about now. No product is perfect, but we are far ahead of any other container security platform out there. And if your customers are looking for kind of the next generation of container security, this is it. And of course, it's been a highly secure secret out there that this technology has been run for a long time. We're part of Platform One's Iron Bank distribution. They actually use us to scan the other products. Our scanning is very powerful. But again, this is a defensive, preemptive platform built to protect one container from another in a preemptive manner. So we challenge every connection attempt against a predefined multi-vector behavioral policy using all these functions, right, to assure that data should move from this container to that container. And if you're not on the list, sorry, you don't get in the club. We terminate you in a gated manner. Gated is a term that came from the firewall world years ago. It simply means that you will not cross, and no data will cross that demarcation point if we say no. There's no, act type confirmation of data that shouldn't have gone across. There's no, just think about it. If you're waiting for something to appear on the kernel or on a syscall table, that indicates that after this process happens, after an attack from this container to that container takes place, some artifact of that is going to show up in the kernel or syscall table and potentially get flagged by your eBPF monitor. Congratulations, you've been attacked. Now you have to react to it. That is not the model that the warfighter, the intelligence community, or our civilian agencies should be using. And now you have an opportunity to go in there and really change the game for your agency customers by giving them technology that's previously not been available. When we say we're application aware, we're not just talking about, we set up a WAF so we understand HTTP and HTTPS or SSL or DNS or something like that. We're talking about absolute identification using deep packet inspection and protocol decoders to identify pretty much any application protocol you might run. We have customers that request, we're doing a lot of work in the satellite community as an example, and things like SCIPS TP and some other obscure protocols. If you need those, just know that this was developed in San Jose, California, soup to nuts, and essentially means that we have complete control and are able to build that protocol decoder for your custom protocol if needed. Sometimes when you're building an aircraft, you might need something of that nature. We just ask that you bring your customer to us and or allow us to develop that for you if the opportunity suits it. Again, we're looking inside the communications chains to assure that that packet level executed attacks do not succeed and harm your agency customers. Again, I don't know of another product that can do this, that can protect you from these types of attacks, whether it's remote code execution or that DNS tunneling attack I mentioned earlier, simply because, again, it's hard to protect yourself from something you can't see. So what is NeuVector? It's a new type of container security. It includes all the container security components, but it's really a container protection platform. The only one that I'm aware of on the marketplace, that is kind of your secret sauce. When you go into a customer, typically you can ask them what they're using, and you'll hear, all sorts of different vendors' names comes up. I have a slide that shows most of the folks out there that use syscall tables and post-event data to try to explain to the customer that they have protection when they only have security. But the key differentiator here is provable protection. Can you stop someone from using bash? I mean, instantaneously. Can you stop an unauthorized process from executing? We can. We haven't found a vendor that can do that. Can you stop a SQL injection attack with a container platform? Not just alert on it, but actually stop it before it infects or damages your assets. We have the preemptive policy enforcement available so that you can do that now. And we prove time and time again that we can do things that these other vendors can't. They talk a good story with their data sheets, again, but in real world POCs, which we hope that you'll capture with this new technology, they fail where we win. And so we very rarely walk away from protecting any agency with a loss. And that is kind of your secret weapon. You can essentially place your agency customers ahead of their attackers for the first time. You think about it, if you're chasing signatures, you're chasing CVEs, and you're doing patchwork, it's kind of like whack-a-mole. What's the next attack? Are you going to be able to come through with some type of prevention model? With NeuVector, you can do that and offer something really different. You can lessen your agency's reliance on chasing those signatures. What does this mean? This means saving them money. In a tactical environment, let's say you go shipboard or airborne. On the mission, obviously, there's not cloud analysts or a network engineer sitting around looking for CVEs. There's no time for that. There's no scale for that. And a lot of these deployments, of course, are air gap. So it isn't just possible. So while CVEs is kind of a nice to have, it makes us feel good to say, hey, we patched all these known vulnerabilities. It's super important. I mean, you won't leave your keys in a car and the door is unlocked at night when you go into the house. You don't want something obviously stolen. So it's good best practice to patch known CVEs. By the way, all CVEs are known. That's how they get written. The unknown is more difficult to protect yourself from. Just know that behaviors, I don't care whether it's known or unknown. It's simply, if you don't match the behavior, you don't get in. So if you want to try this out, recognizing that NeuVector is open source and we provide support for it for programs and projects throughout the government sector. You can simply ask your customers today, your agency customers, what are they using for container security, right? And you'll get all sorts of answers in the review slide I'll show in a second. And then the next question is the obvious. Have you considered moving to a protection platform? Something that can actually stop an attack before it hits your asset? Because there aren't any except for NeuVector. And if you don't believe me, we'll prove it to you. Just sign up for a POC. We'll turn our stuff on and watch all the other products fail at blocking anything preemptively, simply because they don't hold that critical defensive position between quarterback and receiver. So you can ask, is provable zero trust important? For those folks that want to get ahead of the game and actually be able to prove that they can preemptively stop an attack and that our zero trust model is real as opposed to, data sheet fluff. This may resonate with your customer. There's a lot of folks on that zero trust bandwagon. I'm not one of them, by the way. I just want to make sure that the agencies are protected from attack, very sophisticated attacks, not, the same old, scanning and compliance based attacks. While important, and why we include that as part of our solution portfolio, that is not the biggest game in town. Is how do we protect our agency customers against sophisticated attacks by our nation state and criminal adversaries? How about edge protection? Most things are, once they're deployed on the production side, are coming down to the edge. And of course, how about that unmanned tactical application? How about the application that's being loaded, was written in a DevOps environment using Kubernetes and is now deployed on a UAV for battlefield or observation applications? How do you make sure that you protect from container drift? All right, so I hope this is resonating with the audience. I'm going to go over a few use cases to see if any of those have correlation with maybe projects you're working on right now. Certainly, at a high level, you want to move your potential agency customers from a security model, chasing CVEs and spending all that money, to a protection model. You also want to have the ability to prove, not just suggest, that you can protect against very sophisticated application and packet level attacks, which you can do with NeuVector. You can't do with any other platform out there. You want to keep, your customers' dependence on this detect and patch model that's being propagated mainly by the industry itself. They want to sell more detect and patch technologies to you, and move them to from a detect and patch model to protect and defend. These are high level. That tactical unmanned container application protection, assuring that there's zero drift, that there isn't the ability to have an application operation change, whether it's between the dev environment when it's uploaded to the tactical environment, or back and forth between, or when it's an operation, to assure that there is absolutely zero container drift. That's part of what NeuVector offers. Provable zero trust, that's the ability to preemptively block that no one else seems to have, or I haven't found them yet, to quickly, if you're on the DevOps side, to quickly identify CVE issues, instantly prioritize what you could fix with a click. Very popular application for NeuVector. Automated ingestion and deployment of OpenShift RBAC policy. We've had sales, very large sales, go down where customers recognize that ACS is more of a development tool, not made for production, so that they choose to move to an actual protection model with OpenShift, and they don't want to have to reinvent the access rules, the role rules. We automatically ingest and deploy those. Sometimes making it easy to get protected is just as important as any other part of the solution sheet. Seeing what has no patch available, that's always telling in an environment where you're talking to customers and you can instantly see the things that you can't patch, where you may be required or desire to use NeuVector CV countermeasures to protect that data. We have the ability to protect assets, CVEs that are unpatchable, compliance issues that are unpatchable, without having a patch, and essentially not allowing any type of attack to execute against that asset until a patch is made available. SATCOM, any type of mission air gap application, certainly automatic attack forensic quarantine, that's a big seller. We have the ability to quarantine a suspicious behavior until your forensics team can take a look at that. Security as code, being able to develop a kind of security guardrails for your applications, plural, and then to deploy them with strike of a key across multiple environments. Maybe just to stand up security for a new application, maybe to stand up a new production cluster from a DevOps environment where you've pre-deployed everything you want in that new cluster and being able to do it with a click of the keyboard. And then, of course, in the tactical environment, if you had to outfit the same type of protection guardrails across, 25 different aircraft, you could do that in that same cookie cutter manner with NeuVector. Automated packet capture, of course, no one else does that because they have no idea what's inside the packets, harmful or not, that is flowing across a cluster. Zero container drift, being able to lock down any changes to an application once it's deployed. Air gap, cluster container protection, and zero-day malware attack execution termination, as well as protecting multiple clusters, multiple tenants, and having the security protection that you need. Again, we're talking about protection here, not just security. So the ability to block things preemptively before they harm your customer. We are a hybrid platform. That means we don't care what you're using. It could be OpenShift, could be Tanzu, could be straight Kubernetes, could be Rancher, of course, in any cloud form. EKS, AKS, GKE, IBM Cloud, whatever it is, we are transparent to that. We are just there to protect Kubernetes and Docker. So in a quick review, we're preemptive. Unlike everyone else, we have the ability to block an attack before it acquires and damages your target because we're deployed between container pairs. We're inline. We have gated real-time defense for any traffic connection request. That means that we'll block anything that doesn't belong crossing that demarcation point. Our accuracy is based upon complete application and packet level interrogation and control of that data. So we're not just guessing with a port label. That would be foolish in a modern day network. We have deep packet inspection. We use it on every connection request to assure that that data should cross that demarcation point. We're hybrid. We don't care whether you're running Rancher, Red Hat OpenShift, Tanzu, Istio, in air gap, on-prem, or in the cloud. We're built to protect Kubernetes across the board. We're automatic. As soon as you plug us in, as soon as you install NeuVector, we go out and learn all the behaviors automatically. There's no complex configuration. We just ask you to check in what we call monitor mode, that everything is as you need it before you go to production, where you want to lock things down tight. Kubernetes native, we're deployed as a container. There are no agents, sidecars, or code injection required. It takes 5 minutes or 15 minutes, depending on whether you're using a Helm chart or a YAML file to deploy NeuVector. And of course, you can get our installation code from the DoD's Iron Bank, or you can get it off our Git site. Protection countermeasures, the ability to block attacks on unpatched CVEs for malware that has not yet been detected, or for any type of zero-day attack, simply because we control the dial on the TV. If you're an attacker and you've managed to get inside the boundary somewhere, and you're going to execute an attack, you're going to have to start a process, use an application protocol, try to move files, try to open up a connection to a command and control server, do something from a behavioral perspective, regardless of what the image looks like, that is not going to match NeuVector's control point, our actual behavioral control point, your zero-day or zero drift attack prevention mechanism. And we're going to block it at the source before it hits a target right there. Push button security as code. I just kind of went over that. Full life cycle, sure. I mean, most of our customers, when we came out with this 7 years ago, said, this is great, but I still want scanning, compliance, and runtime. Great. We have it all. We just have the next step beyond that, kind of the next generation of security, which is protection. Easy to install. I mentioned that. All these products offer some type of container security. None of these products offer container protection. Why? Because, again, they don't hold a protective position in live traffic to prevent anything. And if your customers don't believe it, we'll be glad to plug in and prove it to them in a POC. We have, broad scope partner program at RGS NeuVector. We're, obviously I'm doing this presentation because we'd love to have you as one of our trusted partners. There's dealer registration available, a lot of new perks coming out this coming year. We're asking that you involve us in deals so we can help you win business and close business across the board with our differentiation. The differentiation, simply put, is really asking your customers whether they prefer to be hit first and then take a reactionary process or react to an attack with some type of patch or some type of post-event fix, or whether they prefer preventative technology, which, like I said, only we have. I know that there, again, are a lot of products out there that claim that they have it. We'd like you to partner with NeuVector and RGS specifically to prove that wrong. And what I'm doing is changing the government's approach. If you're familiar with Platform One and Big Bang and potentially, Black Pearl as an example, these are all, great kind of development descriptions of how you should look at container security. The one missing component that all the reference architectures have is they aren't protection based. So you have the ability to go into all of your agency accounts and really change the game from detection and reaction to protection. With that, I'll end this, and hopefully we have some questions. Like I said, feel free to add any questions to the chat, and I'll be glad to take them on, whether they're technical, business of nature, application specific partnership.
Thank you, Tom.
Good deal, Chris. Unless you don't see any questions, I think we're set for the day. I'll give you back the rest of your day 3 minutes early. I appreciate you staying on.
Thank you, Tom, for taking the time to share your expertise today. And thank you to those who joined us. As a reminder, today's session was recorded and will be available in 1 week. This concludes the webinar. Thanks again for attending, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.